Hello and welcome to Avero's channels. Today we're going to talk about enterprise asset management and how it fits into the whole ERP ecosystem. We get this question a lot. We have a lot of maintenance equipment, we have moving parts, we have a utility, we have fleet. When do you do modernization on asset management? When do you do modernization on your maintenance management systems? And how does it fit into your ERP system? That's what we'll talk about today. Now, enterprise asset management is a huge part of your digital transformation, and you can't ignore it. You rely on it to run your operations smoothly. You rely on it to make sure that you have the right material at the right time, the right people working on the right projects. So it's really important to make sure that you don't leave behind that critical aspect of your operation as you're modernizing your enterprise systems. So what is enterprise asset management, right? You talk about EAM. It's also called CMMS, which stands for Computerized Maintenance Management System, kind of an old school way of saying EAM. So CMMS is not typically used anymore. We're going to refer to this as enterprise asset management. Now, what are you tracking through enterprise asset management? To me, there's a few things that make up the things that you want to track using an EAM system, right? You have obviously, you have material. The things that you're making, the things that you're selling, the things that you're using to provide services to citizens. Where are they? How much do they cost? Do you have enough of them? Is one thing. It's also known as warehousing, also called as inventory management, right? The next thing that's important is what are your assets? Now, there's a key difference between material, inventory, and assets. Your accountants will tell you that anything over a certain dollar threshold is an asset, right? You might have that codified in your city code, county code, or your organization's codes. It depends on your organization's accounting practices. Generally accepted accounting practices or GASB will tell you specifically how to deal with assets. I'm not an expert at the accounting side of asset management, so go ask your CPA, your accountant, your finance director how you classify assets, right? The difference between assets and material or inventory is that assets don't get consumed. Assets get depreciated, right? You're going to consume inventory. You were talking about gravel, nut bolts, pipes. Depending on what organization you are, inventory is different from assets. Now, you want to track both of them, right? Next thing is your labor. Now, you're going to ask me, what does asset management have to do with labor? You're not selling these assets. You're not selling inventory. You're doing something with it. You're building a road. You're making airplanes fly. You're providing critical services through your utility. You need material and inventory to do that. And who's going to do it? We're not at a point where robots are going to take over completely. But labor is important because labor is going to use inventory to take care of your assets, right? So labor is important. And then what's also important is compliance tracking. How are we using our labor, our inventory, our material to take care of our assets in compliance with the regulations that EPA or your local authorities may have put on you? And lastly, business intelligence. Excuse my handwriting. This is the best I can do. Business intelligence, dashboarding, reporting, you name it. Very important to know what is going on. As a director, as an executive, you rely on business intelligence to tell you how much inventory you have left, what assets need preventative maintenance, what assets are broken, where are you short of labor, how much it's costing you. All of this is critically important. And that brings me to the next point. You have to always keep track of how much money this operation is costing you, right? So cost accounting, because your finance director, your CFO, your budget officer will always want to know how much does it take to deliver these services. So enterprise asset management, yes, it has to do with the nuts and bolts of your operation, but then it gets into the people aspect. It gets into the money aspect. So that's where your enterprise asset management system will interface with your ERP system. And you have to make sure that all of this operation is taking place with these 2 or 3 aspects in mind, right? The financial system will want to know how much are you spending on your material, your people, your assets. The other thing that's important to interface is the value of the asset, right? Because as an asset management function within EAM, let's say you are the utilities operations department or the maintenance department, you worry about how well these assets are performing for you. And when I say assets, it could be a building, it could be a water tank, it could be a transformer for an electric utility, or a large vehicle, right? You want to know how well it's performing from an engineering standpoint. Can it do the thing that it was made for? Your financial management will want to know, A, how much this asset costs us to purchase, right? So when you buy an asset, when you write a check for that asset, the financial system will record it as an asset. Remember, I talked about asset value earlier. So when that asset is recorded in your financial system, it has a certain value. Let's just say $100,000. You bought a road roller or a crusher or a bulldozer. That asset cost you 100K. That 100K was recorded in your ERP system as the value of the asset. Now, as you start using the asset and as you start depreciating it, so the financial people will want to know, A, how are you using this asset? What is the useful life of the asset? And what is the depreciation method and schedule to use for the asset? I'm not going to go into an accounting class with you, although that's my background, but there's several depreciation methods, right? Your organization may have its own based on the type and how much you follow GAAP and GASB. So managing assets is a critical element of EAM, and it has 2 aspects to it: the engineering and the actual function of it, and the financial aspect. What's the value? How much does it depreciate every year? And are we adding stuff to it? Are we adding value to the asset that will increase the value of this asset? Now let's think about a building. You built a building in 1970, it cost you $1 million, but over the years you've depreciated it, but you've also added stuff to it. New HVAC, new windows, fancy new stuff. That adds value to an asset. So the net effect of all of that needs to be recorded in your ERP system. So the next thing we'll talk about is materials or warehousing or inventory, right? How does that interface with ERP? In an ERP system, you have a very specific function called as purchasing, also called as supply chain management. But in terms of governments, purchasing or procurement is a term that's used. Now, why am I talking about purchasing in an EAM video? Remember, if you're a utility or a city or a highway department, you're using stuff to provide services to your citizens. So let's just say you are a highway department, right? What kind of material do you need? I'd say gravel, tar, I don't know. Let's just say gravel. So as you're using your material, you need to make sure that you don't run out. If you're about to run out, you need to let purchasing know that we need more gravel. Back in the day, obviously it happened with a phone call, with a letter, with inter-office mail, where the highway department's director or somebody would call the purchasing department, put in a requisition, and they had to be really good about planning for how much they're using so they don't run out. It's also very critical in things like salt. When you have a snowstorm coming in, you have to be really good at predicting how much you're going to need, right? And that work is managed, by the way, in an EAM system. So purchasing and interfacing with purchasing is very, very critical. So what is the interface between EAM and ERP when it comes to materials management and inventory control? Your enterprise asset management system will have a running count of how much usage there is for a certain thing. I'm just going to say gravel, right? And if you've set it up right, you will have things like minimum order quantity. That means that you need a certain quantity available to you in your warehouses of a certain thing at a given time. Or there's also things called automated reorder points, where when the inventory hits a certain minimum quantity, it triggers a requisition that is directly going into the ERP system. And again, if you've set all of this thing, if you've set this process up right, it's going to be automated, right? You're using your gravel until it hits a certain quantity, and an automated requisition is made to your ERP system that then triggers a purchase order or a contract or what have you, right? And now you're talking about going into super detail in ERP. What if the contractor you've been buying it from, their contract's not valid? What if they have to go to RFP again? So all of that is triggered by the automated management of inventory. By the way, it's important to keep things in context. What is enterprise asset management? It is the function that tracks a physical asset or assets from throughout its life cycle, from its inception, from its purchase, from its being put in use, through maintenance, through repairs, through its disposal. And the last piece is critical because when you dispose of an asset, you don't just throw it away into the garbage. You're going to do things like put it out on the internet to sell it to get some value out of it. But as far as the accountants are concerned, the useful life of the asset has been exhausted. They've recovered all the depreciation and they can move on to buying a new asset. So the life cycle of the asset is what an enterprise asset management system manages. What an asset means, how it's managed, what do you consider depreciation, what methods you use. All of those things are unique to your organization and you need to work with finance or your CFO to define all of those things.